In this video, we're counting down the 10 best new Excel features of 2025. We're covering everything from simple quality of life upgrades all the way up to AI and automation. We'll start at number 10 and then work our way down to find out the best new feature of the year. So if you're ready, let's get started. At number 10, we've got Focus Cell. Let's suggest you're working on a big model with thousands of rows and hundreds of columns, and you keep losing track of which cell is currently selected. Well, Focus Cell fixes that. Here we have a busy worksheet. There is color everywhere, but where exactly is the selected cell? It's difficult to see. So I'll click View and then Focus Cell, and that's it. Now we know exactly where the selected cell is. And as I click around the workbook, we can easily find that cell. Now this feature won't change your world, but it will increase your productivity because you'll spend less time asking, where am I? And more time asking, what do I do next? At number 9 is the new Translate function. If you work with international teams, suppliers or customers, then I'm sure at some point you will receive workbooks containing text that you just don't understand because it's not a language that you speak. Well, that's now a thing of the past with the new Translate function. Here is the basic idea. In cell C3, there is a phrase in Spanish, but I don't know Spanish. So in cell C4, I'll type equals, translate, opening bracket. The text to translate is in cell C3. I will then enter ES in double quotes for Spanish as the source language, and then I'll enter EN in double quotes for English as the target language. And that's it. I'll close the bracket and calculate, and there we go. It's saying that you should subscribe to this YouTube channel. Sounds like pretty good advice to me, so go ahead and click that subscribe button and get notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos. But we can take Translate a step further. Here we have a report, and using Translate, I have a cell which contains the target language. If I change the language to ES, all the report descriptions update and it's now in Spanish. Or if I change it to DE, it's now in German. With this function, it means that my report can be understood by anyone, anywhere in the world. Number 8 is Formula by Examples. This is flash fill, but much better. It doesn't just give us static results that we have to update over and over again. Instead, it writes formulas that when the original values change, so does the result. Here I've got a table with some employee data. I just want to create a short name containing the initial and the last name. In the first cell, I'll type N. Allen. Then, when I go to the second cell and start typing the same value, Excel finds a pattern and it jumps into action. Let's take a look at the formula. And yes, we can see that that is exactly the formula that we want. So I will then apply that formula, and it's applied to every row in the table. And now, if I change one of the original values, everything updates just like a normal formula should. So we can give up on flash fill because we now have Formula by Examples, which is a much better option. At number 7, Trim Refs. This allows us to select a larger range of cells, but the range used in the calculation is reduced down to the first and last cells containing values. Here we have some expense data, and let's suggest we want to have a formula for the net plus the VAT. Now we don't want to drag down the formulas, so we decide to select a range which is bigger than we need. I'll type equals, select the first range with some additional space, and then I'll add the second range with some additional space. Unfortunately, when we commit that, we've got zeros at the bottom because there are no values in those cells. And if we were to use the average of those values, it comes in at 141, but that's because it includes the zeros in that calculation. But if we just average the rows with values, we can see it should be 251. So we can add the trim references operator. In the range reference, I'll enter a dot after the colon. That means it will use the last non-blank cell within that range, which is actually cell E14. I'll do the same for the VAT, and I'll add the dot. So when we calculate, it's now only picking up the ranges E6 to E14 and F6 to F14. Therefore, it only populates the cells from G6 to G14. But if we add a new record into our data, when we add the net, the formula expands to include E15 automatically, and when we also add the VAT, everything is now complete. So that's trimrefs. It means less formula dragging and prevents oversized ranges from becoming an issue. In at number 6 is Auto Pivot Table Refresh. Have you ever forgotten to click the refresh button after updating the source data for a pivot table? Of course you have, we all have. And for some reason, we always discover this when we're sat in an important meeting presenting the numbers. But with Auto Pivot Table Refresh, pivot tables now update automatically when the source data changes. Here is a pivot table which is linked to our table. As you can see, they have the same total value. If I click in the pivot table and select Pivot Table Analyze, we can see a new button, Auto Refresh, but it's not currently enabled. So if I update a value in my table, in my pivot table, nothing happens. We have to remember to click refresh to update the data. But if we check auto refresh, that changes everything. If we change a value in the table, everything updates whenever the source data changes. And because I have a table that automatically expands for new data, if I add a new row, I'll use North for the region and Liam for the salesperson. As I type those values, you can see the pivot table updating before your very eyes. That means pivot tables are now more like formulas because they auto-update. Therefore, it's one less thing for our brains to remember to do. At number 5, we have Power Query Refresh in Excel Online. Excel Online has always been an underpowered version of Excel, but this stigma is slowly shifting, and the ability to refresh queries in Excel Online is helping that to take giant leaps forward. Here we are in Excel Online, and if I click Data and then Queries and Connections, you can see we have loaded 501 rows to the table via Power Query, and our table contains 2 files, Demo1 and Demo2. Now let's head over into SharePoint. We can see the 2 files. Let's go and add another file into that folder. And now we have 3 files in the folder. So let's head back into Excel Online and click Refresh All. Power Query is now running, and after a few seconds, we now have 1,000 rows loaded. And if we look in the drop-down, you can see that the Demo3 file is now included in that table. Now, this probably won't change your mind about Excel Online, but it brings us one step closer to the dream of auto-refreshing queries, where we can schedule refreshes to happen without us even needing to open the workbook. Number 4 is Clean Data with Copilot. Let's face it, in the real world, data is messy, with extra spaces, inconsistent capitalization, and a whole lot more. Until now, we didn't know about some of these issues until possibly it was too late. But if you have a Copilot license, it will now analyze your workbook and find inconsistent values and give you the options to fix them automatically. Here, I've opened my workbook and Copilot has automatically identified 3 possible issues. Let's take a look at the suggestions. I have an inconsistent capitalization on Italy. Let's fix that. I also have inconsistent periods in UK. So let's also fix that. And finally, we've also got an issue with USA. So I will also fix that. And now my data is pretty clean. For me, the magic of this feature is not necessarily in the auto fixing, but in the fact that it finds the issue and then highlights it to us. In the past, we probably had no idea there was an issue in our data, and we may have produced incorrect outputs. But now, Clean Data with Copilot tells us there is an issue so that we can take action. In third place, we've got the Copilot function. This is where Copilot stopped just being a side panel and became part of Excel's formula language. Here we have some customer comments, and we want to find out how positive or negative those comments are. To do this myself, I would need to read each comment and make a judgment. I'm unlikely to be 100% accurate, so this is a perfect job for Copilot. In cell C4, I'll type equals Copilot, opening bracket. Then I'll enter my prompt. Perform a sentiment analysis on these comments. Next, I'll select cells B4 to B23. Then I'll say I want the scores to be from -2 for very negative comments and +2 for very positive comments. I'll close that bracket and calculate, and after a second, it now returns the scores. The first comment does seem very positive, so +2 is correct. And if we look at the end, that is very negative, so -2 looks correct. The Copilot function has done a great job. Remember that Copilot is non-deterministic, which means this function isn't for numerical calculations. If you use it for that, you will get errors. And also remember that Copilot can get it wrong, so you do need to check the results. The runner-up at number 2 is Office Scripts sending emails from Excel. We can now send emails directly from Excel using Office Scripts, which means it works on PC, Mac and web, and it doesn't have the security risks of VBA macros. In this example, I have a quote which has been created with a client. I will go to the Automate tab and look at the first script. This is a script that I've already created. It starts by creating the values that we want to use in our email, including creating the text for the email body. Then it uses the OfficeScript.sendMail method, which uses those values. Now we don't need this script window open because I've already created a button. When I click on the button, the script now runs and the email is sent. And if I check the email address, yes, you can see I've received that email. And if I click inside, we can now see the quote information. So we can create cloud-based workbooks which we can use to send emails. Previously, we would have used VBA for this, but given the growing concern over the security of VBA, the fact that Microsoft stopped updating it over a decade ago, and the fact that VBA is not compatible with the new version of Outlook, then it's great to see this gap being filled by Office Scripts. At number 1, the winner is Agent Mode. This is the new toy on the block. It's still in beta, and it's probably still a while before it becomes generally available. But for those with a Copilot license, it could change the way we work with Excel forever. I've got a workbook which contains the headings for a profit and loss account, and I have a table of values. We want to create the formulas to populate the profit and loss account from the numbers in the table. As I record this, Agent Mode is available inside the Excel Labs add-in, and that is a separate free add-in which is created by Microsoft. If I click into that add-in, we can see Agent Mode. I'll select that. Now I will enter my prompt. Once I've entered that, I can set Agent Mode running. And after 32 seconds, it has completed the task. I can see the results on my spreadsheet, and it also shows me a description of what it has done. Now, this all looks very impressive, but it's now up to us to check the formulas created. Because unless we check it, we have no idea if Copilot has got the right answer or not. The things that Agent Mode can do based on natural language is truly impressive. I believe that to date, Microsoft have struggled in creating their Copilot offering in Excel. But this new Agent Mode feature feels like they might now have created exactly the tool we need. So that is my 10 best new Excel features from 2025. What do you think? Would you have included something different? Let me know in the comments. In the year that Excel turned 40, it's safe to say that it's still evolving. and there's certainly a lot more to look forward to in 2026. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.